Okay, so this video may be more brief. I can't off the top of my head since if I have a ton to talk about, but I think I don't. And so what I wanted to get into is writing to market and also how to sort of catch yourself if you're being that person that is maybe not open enough to advice and suggestions to successfully write to market. And I think if you're on Reddit, one of the easiest stereotypes to kind of put it into perspective is if you look at the average type of person that's on the slash r writing subreddit, and if you ever read into the comments there, the posts, you'll find a lot of people who have extremely romanticized the view of what it means to be an author and to be a writer, and they have it in their head that they're all going to be Stephen King, or that to be a writer is this kind of poetic journey that's got to have some kind of artistic integrity and all these kind of fancy ideas. And I think to some extent, you can have that kind of stuff, but the problem is that for the majority of people, if you want to make money writing, you have to be willing to let go a little bit of some of that romance. Ironically, if you're in this case, if you're trying to write romance, you have to be less romantic about the process. And the best way to do that is to kind of knock your opinion of yourself down a little bit, or if you're unwilling to do that, to change the way you're looking at what you're doing. So if you feel like you're aiming for exactly what you want to aim for with as much intention and as much effort as you want to aim, then most people aren't going to be willing to accept anything less than the best. So what you need to do is realize, and I'll kind of happily admit it. I can be a little um, into my own belief about what kind of a writer I am, and I can do that at the same time as I can say, I don't write amazing literature that people are going to talk about for years, but I can also feel pride in the fact that I think I do a good job at writing. And that's kind of the weird dual belief you need to be able to hold, is that you want to be able to believe that you're doing a good job at writing, but you also want to be able to admit that you're not writing the greatest fiction to ever grace the planet. And the distinction there, if you don't want to be a commercial writer, I guess is what I would call kind of what I'm doing, somebody who actively is trying to turn this into a career and make money from it, then yeah, you can be as artistic as you want and you cannot worry about who reads your books. But the I think the honest truth is the majority of people who say that they don't care who reads their books or that they're not willing to sacrifice their integrity, I think those people don't mean it as much as they think they do. And I think a lot of them would love to make money from writing, and they just don't understand that there's kind of another option. It's not that there's two extremes. It's not black and white where you're either writing artistic masterpieces that are straight from your soul, or you're writing total trash that nobody cares about. I think there is a middle ground, and that's kind of for me. That's like the art of writing to market. It's that your talent comes in being able to kind of adapt. It's just like I guess if you were a really good, maybe like video games. If you're really good at one video game, and then you start playing chess, and you want to make money playing chess because for some reason chess is where all the money is. Well, it may not be the video game that you particularly are drawn to, but then you might realize there's kind of a satisfaction in being able to take all the skills and abilities you've gained and honed from the video games you have played to chess. And then you can kind of express your talent in something that's not your passion, but you can still be passionate about expressing your talent. And that, I don't know if that makes sense, but for me, that's kind of how I help myself enjoy writing romance, even though it's not my genre of preference, is that I like to think of the challenge of saying it's almost harder to write something that's not your passion because you don't have that kind of library of things you've read growing up and the thousands of ideas that you've kind of thought about as you've been interested in thinking about them. And so for me, when I'm writing a romance book, I have this kind of miniature library of the books I've sort of forced myself to read that I have to draw on, so that makes it more challenging. And um, I feel like I've gotten a little too zoomed out on that. So just to kind of backtrack somewhat, and what I mean is like if you want to write to market, you have to be able to it's like a compromise. So there's what you want to write, and then there's what people want to read, and you have to be able to accept that you're not going to be able to write it exactly the way you want to write it. You might have more fun if you get to make the guy cheat on the girl because that'll make the tension higher, or you might have fun writing about a guy who's kind of a wuss, or a girl who's super badass and the guys kind of like look up to her. But you have to accept the choice you're making there. Would you rather write something that's a little more fun for you to write, or would you rather write something that people want to read? And it's going to be down to your personality. I mean, for me, as much as I would like to have all the fun in the world writing what I want to write, it's not fun if I don't think anybody's going to read it. And the more people I think are going to read it, the more fun it is for me to write. So to me, that's kind of the mental gymnastics, I guess, I go through to get myself to enjoy writing the market. And then once you overcome, I guess, the willingness to do it, there's the how part. So I mean, how do you know what the market is and how to write to it? And that really just comes from reading. But you don't want to read like a reader. You're not just sitting down to read this book to enjoy it and then be able to explain to somebody, yeah, I liked it. You want to read it very specifically. And to go back to, if you watched my previous video where I was talking about just how I got started, I used the sort of poor analogy that writing the market is like in a coloring book, you're coloring within the lines, and the lines are the market. And so when you're reading for research, you're kind of trying to find those lines. Like, for example, the first time I was reading sci-fi romances and I was trying to kind of figure out like what makes this stuff work, I was looking at some of the stuff like, okay, I would have thought that for two people to have sex in a book, you probably would need to build up a relationship more. But I read two books where that wasn't the case, and it was like, okay, that's one of the lines. Maybe there's a book out there where I can find an example of the relationship getting built up more, but in these two examples that are doing well right now, the characters didn't build up their relationship. They just kind of got right into it. And so that's one of those cases where you have to take your own perception of what would make a good story and be willing to just kind of be like, I guess I'm going to set that aside for now. And maybe that I'll get to use it at some point. But for right now, what I'm looking at doing well is telling me something else beyond what my logic or common sense would tell me. And you have to be willing to accept that and then incorporate it into your own story. And that's kind of the gist of writing to market, is being willing to accept things that maybe don't make sense to you or maybe don't suit your preference, but recognizing that's what people want to read. And if you want to make money, then the only thing you really should be thinking about is, how can I make this more in the direction that people will want to read? So there is, I think there's people who make a career out of kind of paving their own path, but that's where you get into the dangerous territory. If you're hearing all this and you're saying, well, not me, I'm different and I'm going to write better than that, and my writing is so above average that it's not going to matter if I write to market because it's going to be so good, it will be the market. It's great that you're ambitious and that you have all that kind of confidence, but the truth is, when you start going down that mental road, it's pretty much like playing the lottery, whereas writing to market is more like trying to get a normal job. Like, there's actually a decent chance that you can make money if you write to market. Whereas if you're trying to define your own market, break all the rules, and just be so good and so overwhelmingly great of a writer that you're going to just do your own thing and wildly succeed, then you're playing the lottery, because there's a handful of people really in recent memory who do that. So if you want to make money, you should be trying to find any way you can to write to the market. And that starts with figuring out what the market is, overcoming your unwillingness to do it, and then putting it into practice when you're writing your book. Um, and I think that's pretty much what I wanted to get into with that. So I'll cut this video off here, and then I'm still not sure exactly how I want to. I mentioned in the previous video that I might try to record myself writing something, maybe like a new book, and then just kind of walk through how I started. And that sounds fun to me. So I want to do it. I just got to think a little bit more about how I would do that and what that would look like. So may or may not put that one out today, but I'm gonna try to put these both on YouTube today. So thank you for watching.